Hello there, Ungainly Titan here, and I want to have a final look at Fort Triumph. Now that it's out on the Xbox for several months, short version is I would really recommend it on the Xbox and on the PC. The rest I will discuss in the video. Hello there, welcome back to another YouTube video with Ungainly Titan. This time I want to talk a little bit about Fort Triumph. Before I go further into Fort Triumph and what it is and what it's about, I just feel I should make a disclaimer. My name, if you will observe, if you play the game and go through to the credits, or just look at the credits at the very beginning because it's available from the main menu, appears in the credits, along with some such luminaries as Obsidian Entertainment and a few others, and other YouTubers and people like that. However, I never received any monetary awards. Never actually worked or was employed by the publishers or the creators of Fort Triumph. It was mostly as a result of discussions in early access that I got involved in, some of which occurs actually on my YouTube channel on videos relating to Fort Triumph and will be part of the Fort Triumph playlist, about the direction of the game at the time and what exactly it was doing and how it was developing. So with that aside, what is Fort Triumph? Well, it is a mixture, I suppose. It's an RPG, turn-based combat, team-based RPG, reminiscent of kind of XCOM meets D&D, I suppose, is one way you could describe it. There's also a strong element of Heroes of Might and Magic in the game in terms of its ancestry and influences. So there is a 4X world map exploration side of the game, and there's also a tactical war game side of the game where you're literally playing kind of a squad level tactical war game. However, the emphasis in Fort Triumph is on physics. So it's not so much the attack powers of the characters involved and skills related to attack powers like you get in XCOM. It's much more about applying physics effects. And you have 4 kinds of units, 2 melee types, 2 range types. So you have the Savage, the Paladin, which are both melee types, and you have the Mage and the Ranger, which are the ranged types. All of these units have different basic attack types and different physics. Some of them have similar things, but they generally have some kind of a physics attack. They have generally some kind of melee attack or a ranged attack, depending on the units, whether they're ranged or melee. Wizard tends to be more area effect type stuff. The Ranger tends to be arrow based, so their physics stuff tend to involve things like grappling hooks and swinging, moving enemy units by that kind of stuff, whereas the melee units tend to move enemy units by physics, by actually kicking them. You also have move actions and stuff like that, and each character has their own powers, unique traits, and the powers can be leveled up as they gain experience, so they get more powerful powers. And the powers made available as they gain experience tend to be randomly generated, so they get stuff that's mostly from their own class, but they don't necessarily get things in a particular order, so you can get actually quite powerful and advanced powers offered to you very early on. But you have only so many upgrade slots, so that sometimes it is worth your while not, for instance, taking a low-level power offered early in the game and wait for something higher. But you can also get cross-class powers belong to other classes, and some of those can have very powerful synergies. The base game, you play the human faction in the RPG version. The RPG is pretty straightforward. It's fun, and there are mandatory encounters. And what I have found, the mandatory encounters actually scale quite well as well. You're going to build up experience and bring in your units at a fairly experienced level, and the encounters are still challenging. There is no voice acting in the cutscenes, however. All the dialogue and story progression and narration is done by scrolling text on a kind of animated still image. So there's a still image, but there's usually some kind of animation in it. So you're not looking at a completely static background. But the twists and turns, some of the dialogue actually takes place in the actual combat tactical screen. There are elements where it's just scripted and automated. And other stuff then are like cutscenes where you're outside the world into a different environment. As well as gaining power from experience as you level up and do battles, You can also gain power by upgrading your home base, and your home base can be taken by the enemy factions, so sometimes it is worthwhile garrisoning and defending your home base. Usually the home base, you purchase stuff where you upgrade buildings. Now some of the building upgrades just upgrade the capabilities of the home base or upgrade its defenses, and some of the upgrades upgrade your party. The exact nature of these upgrades vary with faction. So here, for instance, we're looking at upgrades for the human faction town. Some of them require money costs, which are Bitcoin, and some require magic. Now, Bitcoin can be gathered as income for your town. You're holding your town. There's also Bitcoin farms, which will provide you with extra Bitcoin. Some of the buildings will boost your ability to earn Bitcoin, and these are common to all the factions. Magic is generally gathered as a resource on the map, and there's not too many renewable resources of magic. There are some, they tend to be quite heavily defended. Other means by which you can upgrade your party is the guild upgrades. These are got by spending renown, which is the currency you gain again by winning battles. The better the quality of your win, the sort of less things that you allow the enemy to do, the better renown you get out of a battle. Tend to get more renown out of fighting on world map garrisons than you do out of the enemy hero parties. This would be on skirmish type games, but it also applies in the multiplayer game, because the enemy factions do send out parties in the RPG version of the game as well. Found artifacts, the final way of upgrading your party. There are some very powerful artifacts that you can find on the world map that can have a significant impact on your party. They're particularly ones that give you extra action points. So, to give you an example, typically each hero has 3 action points. The same applies to enemy units. Or each unit, in fact, has 3 action points. So, it costs 2 action points generally to attack, 1 action point to move. Although you can use action points to move, but then you don't get an attack. However, some artifacts either give you extra action points, or they cool down enemy units and stuff like that. And some of these things can be quite imbalancing in the game, and in particular I think they could imbalance the skirmish game. Now, I haven't actually played the skirmish game a lot I've played it a lot against enemy factions, the AI factions, and against the AI factions it doesn't matter, because you're essentially playing against the AI. The AI cannot get upset with you. It might happen though if in a regular game, if you're playing against regular people as enemy factions, because you can replace the AI factions with people, but only locally. Locally here means that in the PC version of the game you're playing it on the hot seat, so you're essentially swapping out of the controls while you're playing the game. I presume you could probably link up Xbox controllers to your PC and run it with multiple controllers that way, same as you would on an actual Xbox. But in some ways it's an ideal game on the Xbox, and it's kind of a pity that the game never made the kind of revenue that would allow it to develop a proper multiplayer game. I think over the internet multiplayer, or proper balanced multiplayer, would have been a very interesting development of this game. And it's kind of a pity that they never went too far down this route. But you can play side by side with multiple controllers on the console, obviously. Now, obviously, the console version also shares, I think, a problem that the XCOM games have, that you have to be very careful what you're targeting. Either targeting an enemy unit or targeting a square beside an enemy unit when you're moving up to it with a controller, because it's very easy to find yourself not targeting what you think you're targeting, particularly if an enemy unit is standing on a rock or standing on some other piece of the environment. You could be targeting the piece of the environment under them and not the actual enemy unit. It's very embarrassing then when you kick the rock out from under them and this guy then is standing there and will kill you in the next round. I would highly recommend the game on either the PC or the console. I think they both have their advantages, but I actually prefer it on the console, even though the controller can be a slightly more difficult way of moving the units, because the opportunity for side-by-side skirmish game multiplayer is, I think, much more manageable on the console, and it's much more suitable to the console kind of environment, since it's not over the internet multiplayer. But side-by-side gameplay with 2 different controllers on the one screen is a common, or used to be a standard mode of play on the console, and this game supports it, so I think it's an excellent game for that reason alone. that's pretty much it for Triumph, both on the console and on the Xbox anyway, and on the PC on Steam. I would highly recommend it, and I would definitely urge you to check it out. And I will catch you again in the next video. Bye for now.